If you are experiencing problems with your power steering, if you hear the whine, do this job first and see if the whine goes away. If it doesn't go away, then go do the steering pump, and I'll have a different video on that. I'm replacing the power steering reservoir on a 2007 Dodge Grand Caravan. This will work for many years before and after. Setup on this, tools, you need an 8mm wrench to get rid of or to open up the screws that are holding the power steering fluid reservoir in place. You need a 10mm socket to release a nut that comes in from the back. You need an extension for that as well. You need a pair of a wrench, just a pair of pliers to get what I'll show you later. There's a low pressure power steering fluid hose in the back that needs to come off. You need a little flathead screwdriver, a little tiny one to help pry one of the hoses off. And I used a little bit, this is bicycle lube, very light oil to help get one of these tubes off. You need a bottle of power steering fluid. I'm using I looked this up online. I'm using Prestone power steering fluid. It's rated for this car. You also need a replacement power steering fluid reservoir. That's the new one. I've already done the job, so I need to buy one of those online. And you also need some sort of a container to hold the spent or used fluid with a little hand pump or a turkey baster or something like that. Also, I use this rag a lot. I got quite dirty doing this job. All right, so I'll get on now and do the job. All right, the setup on this is a really easy job, by the way. If you're getting charged hundreds of dollars from the mechanic, you definitely do not need to do that. What you're going to do is take a couple of screws off here to unbolt or unclamp the reservoir. Then there's a bolt going through, a nut and a bolt that hold the reservoir in place in the bottom. You'll release that. You'll pull some hoses out. There's air hoses, just so you can get them out of the way. There are two hoses that attach to the fluid. There's a high pressure line right there secured with a clamp, so just undo that and undo the clamp and pull the hose off. Then in the back, this one was the hardest one. I've spent a little time in the video. You need to undo the clamp on the low pressure hose, and then it's really, really tight on there, and there's a flared end at the end of I guess the nozzle that comes out of the back of the reservoir. It took me 5-10 minutes to get that off, so that's why I needed the little screwdriver and the oil. So you pull that off. Then basically you just pull the reservoir out, put the new one in, reattach everything, and then fill it up. And I'll show you at the end how you do that. That's the power steering fluid reservoir. I've got a little hand pump that I just pump into a little bottle down here to discard properly. I just pump out as much of the fluid as you can. You can use a turkey baster or whatever. I find this is just a little tidier. All along, the fluid will very likely, and it will leak out from various hoses and things like that. So I'm just using a pop bottle. You use whatever you want with a throwaway rag. What I'm going to do when I first I drained the reservoir with a small pump. You could use a turkey baster or whatever you got. You can't get all the fluid out. There's still fluid in the system, so when you take this first hose off, it's going to start leaking. That's why I've got that pop bottle. I'm just going to undo the hose and pop the hose into the pop bottle and drain out as much as I can that way. And then I'll start the rest of the job. It's actually quite straightforward. The hardest part is going to be just getting this bolt in the back and getting some of these hoses off. They are going to be just on there quite hard, right? So I started the car. I put the hose into the pop bottle. I started the car, and I'm pumping the last bits out. All right, that worked well. I recovered probably another cup out of there, 8 ounces. So that is most of the fluid done. I want to open up some space, so I removed this small line from that little outlet right there, and then I removed this hose from that outlet up there. Okay, they just pop right out. I'm going to try and get the bolt off. There's a bolt and a nut that go through the bottom of the reservoir, and it feeds through. That's the new part. It feeds just between that slot and keeps it locked in place. You don't need to take the whole bolt and nut out. You just need to loosen it so the reservoir you can pop it up. So I'm going to use my iPhone and just see if I can get way in the back with the light on. All right, this video is from behind the pump. I'm holding this very carefully. So there's my socket. I'm pushing it in on an extension. There is a bolt protruding through the back of the reservoir, and you can see the bolt, or sorry, the nut that's around it. So what I had to do, I'm using my iPhone and looking at the back via the iPhone, and then I'm just able to feed my extension in until there it is, get it locked around the back of the bolt. Ooh, let me pull out here. Then what I'll do is just get the wrench onto the end of that extension through there and crack open the nut. Right, it was actually rather easy to get that bolt off once I used my phone to get the socket and the extension on there. So I just used a wrench. You can see. I'm going to leave it back there. Just if it's already in place, so if it's not going to fall off the bolt, why not? Leave it there. So what I did then, there are two 8mm bolts. I just released those with a socket, and then this pump, or reservoir, sorry, will just pop right off. You could, some videos on YouTube talk about removing all of these hoses. I guess if you want to, but I think it's going to be straightforward to pull that reservoir right out. All right, and that popped right out. And then I've left my my socket on there. You can see where the bolt and the nut are attached in my socket. And now this is completely drained of fluid because I turned the car on and pumped it out. And then I've got to get this this hose off here. So I've released the clamp, and I'll get a screwdriver in there and just work around the edges and pop that off. It shouldn't be too bad. That took a while to get off. It took about 5 minutes, but what I did is I just took this small flathead screwdriver and plunged it into the edge where I could get in there. And then I actually used a little hammer and just popped it in as far as I could, and then just tried to wiggle it. Then I took some light oil and just poured it into the gap that I made, and then tried to do more of this around the edges. Then I took this wrench and grasped the hose. Then I grasped the reservoir and then just twisted, and eventually it just broke out. What's gripping is this little flared edge, which is deep in there. So just take your time; it'll come right off. All right, I put it all back. I found I had to open up the nut in the bolt a little bit to make a gap for the new reservoir to pop into, but I popped it in, tightened that up, replaced the two screws here, replaced the two air hoses over there, replaced the high pressure line here, and I also, of course, wound on the low pressure line coming out of the back of the reservoir before I installed it, by the way. Now I'm going to fill it up. Now I'm going to make a different video. I have to replace the power steering pump, which is why I'm doing this. I've got all the hoses reattached, high pressure, low pressure in the back. I've got the two bolts. I've got the two hoses reattached. Now, I'm quite sure I've got it all. I'm gonna take my power steering fluid and fill this up, and then this is a 2 or 3 step process because the fluid needs to get pulled into the circuit. And then you need to bleed it, which you do by rotating the wheel and just running the car and letting the fluid circulate through, and you'll see air bubbles popping up in this. Perfectly fine. You don't need to bleed it the way you do brakes or anything to keep vacuums. You just don't have to do that. All right, so I'll get going with that. So reattach the battery and start the car up, and I've put in I probably put in half a liter right now, and it's full, as you can see. But when I start the car up, the pump is going to work, I hope, and it will suck all this fluid through. All right, I'm going to run this. What I noticed is that the pump was whining at the beginning, but now as fluid is getting in there, the whine is going away. It's sounding normal again.